All right, guys, how's it going? Fishing California with EBA. Today we're talking all about fishing, like always. Really want to focus on, of course, time of season, fall, fishing in the fall, Lake Camanche, California, located in the Motherlode near Ione, California. This is a little body of water, or some people consider it a bigger body of water. But the majority of Lake Comanche is a shallow fishery. Um, Water's low, it's down right now. We're going to talk about how to really, and generally the water is low in the fall. So we're going to talk about how to break down Lake Comanche, how to fish Lake Comanche in the fall, fishing in the fall, what you need to do, the baits you need to focus on, the colors, the techniques, those types of things are what we're going to talk about today. So let's do it. Lake Comanche, California, nice fishery. Um, right now the water's fairly clear. Right now, most of the areas in that body of water are shallow areas, a lot of shallow areas, except toward the dam. North end of the lake has some deeper parts, but that whole southern area, and the midsection of that lake are fairly shallow, um, if not, extremely shallow. So covering water, of course, in the fall is key. Covering water, searching for the active schools of fish, for schools of fish in general, bait balls, things of that nature. However, one thing I've noticed about Lake Comanche is there are certain baits that work better. There's certain color patterns. There's certain things sometimes that add up. It seems to be what I would call, you know, small little things that over time give me tell signs of, okay, this is more focusing on the largemouth. This is more focusing on the spotted bass. The spotted bass seem to be really interested in this color pattern, and the largemouth aren't. Vice versa, and then you start talking, other species of bass. So each bass really dials into certain color patterns. I want to break down my favorite color patterns right now. So it's fall. Sometimes you've got a lot of low light kind of conditions. And a lot of times we've got windy days creating less water, less light penetrating through that water. And I like to go with a lot of flat colors. I like to go with those bare bones, those flat, those mute, faded type colors. I like to stick to those patterns. So like, instead of a bright white, I'm gonna go with a very flat mute, like I said, faded type color white, almost like a bone, maybe a bone color, but like I said, on the flat spectrum. And I like to stick with these flat mute colors. And then on the sunny days, which are not as plentiful, and like I said, with the wind that we're gonna have, it's gonna the light underwater isn't gonna transfer quite as well with that wind and those choppy water conditions. So the color is key. I would get out there with some kind of a bone white, would be staple A, number one. And then, get something in the pumpkin color. I like regular pumpkin, and just a pumpkin sounds simple. Green pumpkin, black flake seems very basic, very productive, very natural colors, very mute. It's a bland color. Once again, very faded in a way, doesn't have that gloss on it. So sticking with these colors is going to get you a lot of bites. I like purple and plum. I like that color a lot. And once again, I don't like all the glitter right now. I'm not too, I mean, there are days, like I said, give me those sunny days. I'm okay with having the glitter out. But, a lot of this wind um, affects that as well. But that's the key, I would say, as far as color goes, going with very natural, mute, bland colors. And then as far as, when we speak about, techniques, it's really hard to beat a spoon, a drop shot, and an A-rig. Okay, a lipless crankbait. So those baits are hard to beat right now. A jerk bait is of course wonderful, because you can work it like a crank, you can work it like a jerk bait, you can pause it, stop it, just kind of go a bit crazy with how you want to go and work that jerk bait. But the jerk bait, the crank bait, they work very well. I do start out very, very fast usually in my particular cadence, and then slow down. And then from there, I kind of, adjust accordingly. But I like to start off a bit faster, cover an area, let's say really fast with a high gear ratio reel or so, or type, and then do that really quick, and then just completely do that same series of casts, but now with a different ratio, with a different cadence, with a different type, and see what I can do. Can I draw fish? Can I get bit? How am I feeling about it? Type of thing. So that's one of the first things too, is figuring, okay, let's cover water fast, and then let's slow down and cover a lot of this same high percentage water that we just fished. And you're going to say, well, how do I know the high percentage waters? And we're going to talk about that in a minute, the spots you want to focus on. But the high percentage, techniques that we're talking about right now are going to be, yo-yoing, um, rip baits with the jerk baits. That's really good. But yo-yoing, spoons, spooning, some people call it, whatever. Just getting on these areas of the lake that are 20 to 45 feet in depth and ripping a spoon and letting it flutter fall and just waiting to see. That's got to be, if you get on the right school, the right time, the right whatever, you can get on some studs and you can get on a few numbers, and then you can drop that drop shot down there, pick a few more out. Depending on how deep you are, you might be able to get a crank or a jerk bait down there and start doing some things and pick off a few more. These fish are very, very interesting at this time of year. I do notice myself, I'm running through them every angle and every way I can, trying to get them to bite. Different baits, different ways, obviously, that they're fished is presenting different situational, and what I'm trying to focus on is what is triggering these fish. Do I see anything triggering these fish? I'm looking for a certain behavior. Generally, when you're doing it, and I've gone out there and, for example, when you're fishing it the right way, for example, we're talking about, spooning for right now. When you're spooning, a spoon, it's really important to have the right retrieve, the right gear ratio to retrieve the right amount of line, because if you're aggressively spooning like I do a lot, which means very hard, very fast, very much just full swing, very aggressive, like I said, you're gonna need a high gear ratio to get that line back, to be able to back up, get as much line as you're pulling out. And a lot of times it's a reaction bite, so those fish are generally on the bottom, or somewhere near the bottom, and they look like dying bait fish. So a lot of times when you're running your jerk bait through the same school, you kill it in that area where you've got fish, where you're marking fish, or where there's fish. I don't really even use fish finders anymore, but you get that area, it's holding and where they're holding, and you just, that's when you're gonna really start playing dead, playing the pause game, getting your cadences really fine tuned. So a lot of the time when you're cranking and you're throwing a jerk bait, getting it down to the proper depth is key. That's number one. And the second thing is, once it's in the proper depth, I call it the strike zone. Once we get it in the strike zone, the next key is to trigger the strike, to trigger that bite. We got to trigger the bite. We got to get the fish. So that's the thing. Right now, moving baits are gonna be number one. They're looking at bait balls. They're looking at schools of fish. They're going after, everything's active right now, the entire ecosystem. So everything's moving around at a, everything's getting ready for winter. It's the transition period, so everything's getting ready. Right now, I would focus on the methods I've talked about, the colors I've talked about, the techniques we've talked about: jerk baiting, cranking. We've talked about drop shotting. We've talked about spooning. And the A-rig, I did mention the A-rig. The one thing I want to mention before I let you guys go is the spinner bait. So fall fishing with the spinner bait, sometimes that spinner bait, oh man, I can't tell you, like the way you might have to modify it is going to be like you might have to cut all the strands of almost out and make it almost no strands in the spinner bait. You might have to add strands, you might have to add flash, you might have to add some mylar flash, you might have to do something like add feathers in there. I know, sounds odd, right? It's really simple things, subtle things that make the difference between getting those extra few bites or getting that big fish to bite, triggering that school to get active to begin with. And these little subtle things, man, they come, they go. You never know when they're going to hit. It's interesting, but I can tell you one thing. When they haven't been presented this particular look, or they haven't actually, seen some of these things, they tend to be very curious, and that's why I'm looking for active fish. I'm looking for activity with fish. I'm looking for curious fish that are like, what the heck is going on? I've seen a lot of spinner baits. I haven't seen that. And a lot of times I get follows, and it lets me know, like, hey, I'm like one step away. I'm like this close to getting that fish to trigger. I just got to figure out how. So Lake Camanche, California, fall fishing, excellent. Largemouth, spotted bass. You get to the rainbow trout fishing, it's phenomenal this year. Everybody's upset right now because, oh my God, well, there's a lot going on and there's a lot to be upset about. But let's focus on the positive for a minute. There's nobody at that lake. There's low pressure. There's low activity. There's just not a lot of presence on the water. There's no boats really going on. Obviously, that's a bummer. But the activity, the lack of activity, and that fishery makes that fishery prime right now. Fishing's excellent. Fishing in general is excellent. Get out there, get on some fish. Lake Camanche, fall fishing. Get on it. Get on it. I guess before I let you guys go, I'll let you know that please like and subscribe. If you want more content, just reach out. We'll make that content for you. We're a small channel trying to grow, trying to get you guys on fish. Appreciate you watching.